Welcome to Echoes of the Unknown, the podcast where we explore some of the world's most fascinating unsolved mysteries. I'm Jack Montgomery, and today we're opening a book that no one has ever been able to read. It's not a legend. It's not a lost text whispered about in the shadows. It's real. It exists. You can see its pages yourself. For over 600 years, it has held on to its secrets. The medieval Voynich Manuscript is written in an unknown script, illustrated with impossible plants and strange celestial charts, studied by generations of experts, and still unreadable. At first glance, the Voynich Manuscript looks like a typical early Renaissance codex, an ancient manuscript text in book form. It was written on vellum, a high-quality parchment made from calf skin, bound as a volume and built to last. But the deeper you look at it, the stranger it becomes. Its approximately 240 pages are filled with flowing, confident handwriting, a script that resembles no known alphabet. The characters repeat. Certain symbols appear frequently, others rarely. Words cluster in patterns. Lines seem carefully composed, as if the writer followed rules that were second nature. And then there are the illustrations. Many pages show botanical drawings, stems, leaves, blossoms, and roots. But the plants don't match any known species. Some resemble real herbs drawn by someone working from memory. Others look like hybrids, stitched together from parts that shouldn't belong on the same plant. Other pages show circular diagrams that look like astronomical charts, rings of stars, segmented wheels, symbols resembling zodiac signs. There are fold-out pages filled with elaborate multi-part designs, like maps of a system no one recognizes. And in one of the manuscript's most unsettling sections, small nude figures, almost always female, appear bathing in pools or channels of green-colored liquid, linked by networks that look like pipes. Some readers see anatomy, others see alchemy, yet others see something more symbolic, a medieval attempt to draw the unseen workings of the body, the cosmos, or both at once. Whatever it is, it looks intentional. It looks organized. It looks like it means something. But no one can say what. The strongest anchor we have is the material itself. In 2009, radiocarbon dating of the manuscript's vellum placed it in the early 15th century, roughly the first decades of the 1400s. That doesn't tell us who wrote it, or where, or why, but it does tell us this. Whatever the Voynich manuscript is, it's not a modern fabrication. It's old, extremely old. The modern name for the manuscript comes from Wilfred Voynich, a rare book dealer who purchased it in 1912 from a Jesuit collection near Rome. Voynich immediately suspected he had found something extraordinary, and he spent years trying to solve two mysteries at once: what the book said and where it came from. Inside the volume was a crucial clue. A surviving cover letter dated 1665 from a scholar in Prague named Johannes Marcus Marci, addressed to German Jesuit scholar Athanasius Kircher, who was based at the Jesuit Collegio Romano in Rome. Kircher was a polymath, a person whose extraordinarily broad knowledge spans many different subjects. Marci had sent Kircher the mysterious manuscript, asking him to try to decipher it. In the letter, Marci described what he had heard about the manuscript, including a story that, at some point in the past, Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II had purchased the book for a large sum, believing it to be the work of medieval English polymath Roger Bacon. That letter, still attached to the manuscript today, is one of the key historical documents that helps trace its provenance before it resurfaced in 1912. That story is famous and very important to treat carefully because it's not a proven fact. It's a report, a tradition, something Marcy says he had been told. It might contain truth, exaggeration, or misunderstanding, but it tells us something else. Even by the mid-1600s, the manuscript was already seen as mysterious, valuable, and hard to place. Kircher, the man who received it, was exactly the kind of person you'd send an impossible book to if you wanted to decipher it. He was known across Europe for tackling puzzles, languages, ciphers, ancient scripts. If anyone could read a book no one else could read, it would be him. But despite Kircher's best efforts, he failed. The Voynich Manuscript drifted through time, from private hands to institutions, until Voynich brought it into the modern era, where a new kind of reader took interest: the codebreaker. If this book couldn't be read as a language, maybe it was an encryption system, a cipher hiding a plain text underneath. That idea attracted serious minds. Over the 20th century, prominent cryptologists studied the Voynich text, including William Friedman, one of the most influential American codebreakers of his era. Friedman and his collaborators approached the manuscript with the instincts of cryptanalysis: frequency counts, pattern searches, structural assumptions, the hunt for a key, but they were unable to solve it. And that failure matters, not because it proves the manuscript is impossible to solve, but because it shows just how difficult the problem is. The text doesn't behave like random scribbles. Statistical analyses have found patterns in the words, the space-separated units, that resemble properties often seen in natural languages. But that similarity is not the same as proof. A clever system can imitate language-like statistics without actually containing meaningful language. So the statistics keep the debate alive, without ending it. And that is the trap the Voynich Manuscript sets for everyone who studies it. It looks meaningful enough to obsess over. It looks structured enough to be solvable. And it refuses, year after year, to give up its secret. As the decades passed, theories multiplied. One school of thought argues the text represents a real language, but one that is unknown, extinct, or written in an unfamiliar way. History is full of scripts that took centuries to decipher. Linear B, a Bronze Age script used by the Mycenaean civilization, was unreadable until the 20th century. And Linear A, a different, even older script dating as far back as 1800 BC, remains undeciphered to this day. If the Voynich language is indeed real, the key might be missing context: the region, the dialect, the cultural assumptions. Without that, even a readable script can become a wall. Another school argues it's a cipher, but not a simple substitution. Medieval cryptography existed, but it was often less sophisticated than people imagine. And yet the Voynich text seems to have its own internal rules. If it is encrypted, it may use a multi-layered system: abbreviations, nulls, deliberate noise, or a method designed to resist anyone outside a tiny circle. Another possibility sits between those two: a constructed system, not exactly a language, not exactly a cipher, but an invented method of writing meant to organize knowledge privately. A personal shorthand, a restricted script for a community, a mnemonic system that only works if you already know what it refers to. And then there is the most uncomfortable idea of all, that it's an elaborate hoax. In the early 2000s, computer scientist Gordon Rugg argued that text with Voynich-like properties could be generated using a grill method, a kind of mechanical template approach, producing pages of plausible-looking language that contains no message at all. In other words, a book designed to look like secret knowledge without holding any. That theory has its own power because it offers a motive that perfectly fits the medieval world: money, patronage, prestige. If you could sell a mysterious book of knowledge to a wealthy buyer, someone like Emperor Rudolph II, famous for collecting alchemical and occult works, you might profit enormously. But critics of the hoax theory point to the same thing that keeps drawing everyone back: the manuscript's depth. It's not 1 or 2 pages of nonsense. It's hundreds of pages, with sections that feel distinct, with illustration themes that repeat and evolve. Creating that level of consistency would be a massive undertaking, especially if the goal was only to fool someone long enough to get paid. So even the hoax theory doesn't close the case. It only widens it, because the Voynich mystery isn't just about text, it's about purpose. What kind of book is this trying to be? Many researchers divide the manuscript into broad sections based on the illustrations: an herbal section, an astronomical or astrological section, a balneological section with bathing figures, a pharmaceutical section with jars and plant parts, and pages of short paragraph-like entries, sometimes called the recipes. That structure suggests a compendium, a reference work, a manual, a catalog. And if it's a reference work, then the plants matter. Some botanists have tried to match the drawings to real species used in medieval medicine, arguing that the oddness could reflect stylization, copying errors, or the blending of sources. Others argue the plants are too inconsistent, too anatomically wrong, to be purely observational, suggesting they are composites or symbolic representations. The astronomical pages add another clue. Zodiac motifs appear, along with star-like marks and circular layouts that resemble calendrical or astrological charts. In the medieval worldview, astrology wasn't just superstition, it was part of medicine. People timed treatments by the stars. They believed celestial forces influenced health, fertility, and temperament. If the Voynich Manuscript is a medical text, astrology would fit naturally. And then we return to the bathing figures. Are they literal, illustrating therapeutic baths, mineral waters, and medieval spa culture? Are they metaphorical, perhaps bodily humors flowing through channels? Are they alchemical, representing transformation, purification, and distillation? Or are they something else entirely? A symbolic language in pictures paired with a symbolic language in text. No matter what you believe, the book keeps offering just enough to build a theory and just enough contradiction to break it. In the modern era, computers joined the hunt. Researchers applied algorithms to compare Voynich word patterns with known languages, looking for statistical fingerprints. Some studies have argued the text contains non-random structure and topic-like clustering. Others have demonstrated that similar structure can emerge from generative methods that don't encode meaning in the way we assume. And every few years, a headline announces victory. One claim suggested the underlying language might be Hebrew, encrypted and rearranged. Another proposed that the manuscript was written in a Proto-Romance tongue, a kind of early Romance language, and presented a translation. These claims gained attention and then met heavy skepticism from linguists and manuscript specialists who questioned the methods and the results. That cycle has become part of the Voynich story. A solution appears, a community reacts, experts push back, the solution fades, the manuscript remains. And maybe that's the most honest statement you can make about this book. It's not that no one has tried, it's that every attempt so far has failed to convince. Which leaves us with the most haunting possibility, the simplest one. What if the manuscript is readable only within a context we no longer possess? a language community that disappeared, a code system whose key was never written down, a private tradition that died out, a book designed for someone who already knew what each symbol stood for. In that case, the Voynich Manuscript isn't a lock waiting for a clever enough key. It's a message written to a world that no longer exists, and yet it survived. It outlived its author. It outlived its intended readers. It outlived the institutions that first preserved it. Today, it is housed at the Voynich Rare Book and Manuscript Library at Yale University, cataloged as MS 408. It is protected and studied, its pages digitized so that anyone can examine them. The book is no longer hidden, and yet it still cannot be read to this day, which is why the Voynich Manuscript feels less like a puzzle and more like a confrontation, because it challenges a modern assumption that information is always recoverable. That meaning can always be extracted if only we apply enough intelligence, enough computing power, enough cleverness. Sometimes history refuses. Sometimes a text becomes an artifact, not of what it says, but of what has been lost. And that may be the Voynich Manuscript's real power. A book filled with careful handwriting and deliberate drawings. A book that looks like knowledge, and yet stands before us as pure mystery, reminding us that there are gaps in the record that no amount of effort can automatically close. The Voynich Manuscript sits quietly in the light, not disappearing, not hiding, not running from explanation, just waiting, untranslated, unconfirmed, and unsolved. Thank you for listening to today's episode of Echoes of the Unknown. If you found this story compelling, please don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share with fellow mystery lovers. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and remember, sometimes the deepest mysteries aren't the ones that vanish without a trace. They're the ones that survive in plain sight, daring us to understand them.